that Brazil is already selling a lot of soybeans to China.
Olá, este é o Poder Entrevista. Eu sou Paulo Silva Pinto, editor sênior do Poder 360. Vou entrevistar Alan Wolff, integrante do Peterson Institute for International Economics, em Washington, capital dos Estados Unidos. Alan Wolff tem graduação e doutorado em Direito pela Universidade Harvard. Foi vice-diretor-geral da OMC, a Organização Mundial do Comércio. Dr. Alan Wolff, thank you for accepting the invitation for this interview.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Agradeço também a todos os web espectadores que assistem este programa. Esta entrevista por videoconferência está sendo gravada em 8 de setembro de 2025. A entrevista a partir de agora será em inglês. Dr. Alan Wolff, I began asking you if you could explain to our audience the reason you think the Supreme Court of the United States will probably maintain President Trump's tariffs.
Well, the starting point is, of course, the statutory authorities, and both the Court of International Trade, which is the specialized court in the United States that deals with tariff matters, found that a panel of 3 judges found that these tariffs were illegitimate, not authorized by the statute. The statute being the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, IEPA, as it's colloquially known. They found that there was no authority to have tariffs at all. Then that was appealed. And after the finding of the lower court in May, just this recently, a week ago or so, the Federal Circuit, which is the appellate court, agreed with the lower court by a vote. They had 11 judges sitting en banc, which means as a panel. They agreed with the lower court that there was no authority by a vote of 7-4. Now it goes to the Supreme Court. If the court were made up of trade lawyers, I'd say they look at these statutes the way I do, that there was no authority. Yes, the 2 court decisions that have already been taken are correct. But they're not trade lawyers. They have a broader scope, and it may be, and I say maybe, that President Trump has made this an issue of the foreign affairs power of the United States under the Constitution. Article 2 of the Constitution is about the president's role, and it has no tariffs in it. It has, or tariff authorities in it. What it has is foreign affairs authority. The president is the chief negotiator for the United States. He may have successfully moved this issue from statutory correctness of the initial decision to a matter of foreign policy that's been now ratified by the United Kingdom, by the European Union, in effect, by Japan, by a number of other countries who have agreed that they will negotiate on the basis of the tariffs that the president has applied under their agreements. So the Supreme Court has been, this Supreme Court, at least 6 out of 9 justices, have been very favorable to the president. And my instinct is that they will not want to upset international relations by coming out with a finding that the tariffs never were authorized, are still not authorized, and now must be struck down.
Perfect. Now, the case of Brazil is special because the U.S. runs a surplus in the bilateral trade. Is there a possibility of any other court decision in this case?
I don't think so. This is a matter of uh, the court giving blanket deference potentially to the president to set tariffs, and the fact that there is no agreement will not be a basis in law for differentiating the case of Brazil from the case of the others who have entered into agreements. So I think that is, it would be nice to have that hope for U.S. Brazilian relations, but I don't believe it's very justified.
And do you think negotiations could change the situation?
Overnight, in an instant, the president has taken upon himself to be the sole determining person, the deciding factor in international trade relations, setting tariffs as he wishes. If the court does not intervene for others, it will not intervene for the case of Brazil. So, uh, yes, there could be a solution instantly with any country, not just Brazil, if the president determines that this is, in his view, appropriate.
In the case of Brazil, and not everybody is aware of it, certainly you are, President Trump said there's a political reason. He doesn't agree with the trial of President Bolsonaro and other things in Brazil. Do you think there is room for negotiation in this case?
Well, there are two issues here. One is, how would the court view it? Does that make a difference for the court? I don't think it does. The dissenting judges, the four who said the president was authorized to do what he did with respect to all tariffs, said, we don't mind the president using, we think he's authorized to use tariffs as a bludgeon to get Canada and Mexico to stop the trafficking, and China, stop the trafficking in fentanyl drug trafficking. So this would be in line with that sort of thinking, that the president can use the tariff as a weapon to foster the foreign policy of the United States. By the way, I should state very clearly that if I were on the Supreme Court, I would find differently, and I would agree with the two lower courts. But I'm not on the Supreme Court, and those that are have been very deferential to the majority. The 6 out of 9 have been very deferential to the president's use of various authorities of all kinds.
Now, what do you think will be the impact for emerging economies like Brazil if the United States keeps these tariffs for a long period?
I think that there'll be a rearrangement of trading relationships. That Brazil is already selling a lot of soybeans to China and others, and finding the U.S. market impaired, market access impaired by Trump tariffs. There will be a natural movement on the part of the private sector to seek out other markets, and those other markets will everywhere but the United States. But this is not just a phenomenon for Brazil. This is what will happen with respect to many countries. The EU, even though it has a deal with the U.S., Japan, and those who don't have agreements with the United States, like India, they will try to find alternative markets. The U.S. accounts for 13% of world trade. That means there's 87% of world trade not accounted for by the United States. And it is very likely that 87% will grow more rapidly than its current share. That share will be a larger share of world trade.
But soybean exporters from the United States asked the U.S. government to pressure put a pressure upon China for not buying Brazilian soybeans. Could it work for them and against Brazil?
I don't think China would want to overtly make an agreement that would be adverse to its supplies from Brazil. China is a food importing country of enormous size. Brazil has become a major source of not only soybeans but other agricultural products. And I don't think China would readily wish to alienate Brazil by making some agreement with the United States to avoid Brazilian products. I think China would want to have ready access to all countries, including the United States.
Talking about the political effect in the United States, what will be the effect of for midterm elections for Congress when it comes to tariffs?
Well, there's so much else going on. Of course, someone who spends their time thinking about trade, as I do, would think that trade is a number one objective, and it depends a lot on what's happened to consumer prices. If consumer prices have gone up substantially, if inflation has gone up substantially, there'll be pressure on the president to moderate tariff policy. Now, how that plays in races, Democrats versus Republicans, the Democrats would say the president has overreacted, overemphasized tariffs as part of his policy. The president would say everything is going along well. We don't know when the impact of tariffs will be felt and to what extent. Someone has to pay the tariff, and you could say, well, the importer of record by law has to pay the tariff, but he or she can't absorb the tariff. It has to be passed on to customers to a degree. That hasn't happened fully yet. So retailers like a Walmart or other retailers have no doubt absorbed some of the cost of the tariff, but that can't go on forever. They have to be profitable as well.
Now, what about the effects of the election on tariffs? I mean, there will be a new Congress. Will it change anything?
Well, if the Democrats are elected, first we are bicameral, so there are two houses to get elected. If the Democrats are elected in one house, that's not a lot of power. It's some power, but it doesn't change radically the political outlook. If the Democrats have both houses of Congress, which is something one can't predict at this point by any means, then they could constrain what the president does and change it, override a veto, but that would be difficult. We don't expect suddenly a 2/3 majority in both houses, House of both the Congress and in the Senate. That no one's predicting that. So the future of policy would be in the direction of some degree of moderation. The Democrats would be not free traders totally, but more selective in their approach. Are they unhappy with a country that puts on a digital services tax and the president retaliates against that country? There'd probably be support in the Congress. If the president retaliates against China for what he sees as unfair trading practices, there'd be a lot of support in Congress from the Democrats as well. But would they support the Trump current policies? No.
How do you see the role of the WTO in this current context of tariffs and trade wars?
Well, this is going to be the subject of a public forum this next week in Geneva, with a lot of people giving a lot of opinions and advice as to what will happen. There is an interesting development, which is the EU, von der Leyen, the president of the Commission of the European Union, has said there ought to be closer coordination between the EU and the CPTPP countries, the Trans-Pacific Partnership countries, and but they've talked in terms of, or at least Cecilia Malmström, former Swedish trade minister and former commissioner for trade of the European Union, has talked about global plurilateralism. Well, what does that mean? How can there be plurilateralism, which is less than the globe, and global plurilateralism? And I think what she means is countries who are like-minded, and Brazil might become one of them, would sit down and draft the rules of this that should be applied by everyone in the system, but for the present would be only those who sign up. So the 27 members of the European Union and the CPTPP countries, the Trans-Pacific Partnership countries. So, and Korea would probably join in that group, as well as some other Latin American countries, maybe the Ottawa Group, so-called, which are 13 countries that the Canadians convened to deal with WTO reform. So there could be, say, 59 or 60 major trading countries, maybe not including China initially, not including the United States, certainly, who would try to say, what rules do we want to live by? And everyone should live eventually by the same set of rules, and we'll design those. So will it happen in the WTO itself? We'll see, but it will happen for the WTO.
In your view, is the global economy moving towards more protectionism, or is it just a temporary phase?
Well, the world has not actually turned its back on trade. World trade continues to grow. The United States has introduced a tariff, a broad tariff, as well as selective tariffs by industry, by product. There has been no great movement towards protectionism. There are complaints about China, many complaints against China, China's industrial policy, excess capacity, that sort of thing. But the countries of the world have not said, by any means, the rest of the world has not said, well, we're not going to live by the existing rules. So the amount of protectionism has been restrained, even following the financial crisis. We did not see the system falter, and I don't think it's going to fail. I think countries will adhere to their obligations, not with the United States, because the United States has made it clear that it's living by a new set of rules, but in its trade amongst the rest of the world, the countries of the rest of the world with each other, they've not opted for high protection. The world goes on.
Perfect. What lessons can we learn, if any, from past trade disputes that could help Brazil and other countries in this moment?
Well, I think an interesting thing has happened with the United States destroyed the ability to appeal cases so that judgments couldn't be final in disputes at the WTO. So what's happened? Cases are still filed, but countries find a solution. This does not apply to the United States. The United States is not looking for solutions, but other countries have found solutions in their bilateral difficulties. And I remember sitting down when I was Deputy Director General of the WTO, sitting down with the Brazilian agricultural minister, and he said, the problem with the WTO is when you bring a case, when you have a dispute, when you have a problem, you cannot get an answer. Now, he didn't really mean that you couldn't get an answer eventually. What he meant was it was so time-consuming that it was justice delayed is justice denied. It just wasn't effective. What has happened is countries have come to resolution of their differences much more quickly in these times that are rather fraught, that are difficult. So a lesson is countries will pursue what they see as in their best interest. And the major body of countries have said, we're not giving up on the existing system. So there's hope. And does the United States rejoin the community of nations eventually? I hope so. I think so. But it'll take a while.
Now, Dr. Wolff, last question. You said in a recent article that possibly in 20 years or so, free trade will prevail again. Why you think so?
Efficiency. Uh, if you say, look, most of the world's socks. I mean, it is a rather pedestrian sort of idea, a choice of something. But let's say 50% or more of the world's socks are produced by China. They do it very efficiently. Uh, I don't know what state subsidies were involved in getting them to where they are today, but will anybody say, well, I really want to invest in trying to get more efficient than the Chinese, so I'll buy from China and I'll make something else where I have an advantage. And businesses always search for cost-cutting measures. This doesn't mean that none of them care about sustainability or that they don't care about their customers' interests. What it does mean is they strive to be efficient. And this is like Newton's laws of physics. An academic law, in my view, is that eventually efficiency wins out. Adam Smith, 300 years ago, who was not an economist, he was a philosopher, looked at the world around him and he said, if I can specialize in making something with efficiency, I will have an advantage. And the bigger my market is, therefore, I should locate my factory near a port so that I have a bigger world market instead of a national market. Then I will be able to sell more and at a profit. You can't repeal that. It's a fact of life. It's a law of human behavior that someone who is able to, a company that's able to make something better, cheaper, more efficiently, is ultimately going to prevail because it's against common sense and personal interest to overpay. So that's why I say it'll take a while, perhaps, to get to that position where we say, look, if Brazil is very good at production of soybeans or making small commuter aircraft or medium-sized commercial aircraft, we want to buy those. And it's unlikely that others will be able to do as well as Brazil has done, where it has specialized in some key products and become highly competitive.
Dr. Alan Wolff, thank you very much for this interview for Poder 360.
My pleasure. I wish you great luck and smooth trade relations between two countries. The United States and Brazil will return at some point.
Agradeço também a todos os web espectadores que assistiram este programa. Esta entrevista por videoconferência foi gravada em 8 de setembro de 2025. Para ficar sempre bem informado, inscreva-se no canal do Poder 360, ative as notificações e não perca nenhuma informação relevante. Muito obrigado e até a próxima.